Comments to English, Mazda, the cars, Mazda cars. That goes to Persian and becomes, the Madhya goes to Persian, and by the time it reaches English, it becomes Mazda. Did you know that? The Mazda cars and Mazda, that's actually Madhya. Interesting. Pure, Adanam, eating, Shashvat, always, Vivikta, secluded, Kshema, peaceful, Sevanam, dwelling. Seva comes into English also, serve, serving, Seva, same words. Every third word in English I can find you a Sanskrit, because Sanskrit is an Indo-European language. Okay. So, one should cease performing conventional religious practices and should be attracted to those which lead to salvation. One should eat very frugally and should always remain secluded so that he can achieve the highest perfection of life. Okay, maybe you could repeat it. One should cease performing conventional religious practices and should be attracted to those which lead to salvation. One should eat very frugally and should always remain secluded so that he can achieve the highest perfection of life. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshururmitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vande Nandavarja Srinam Padrinam Vavikshnasha Yasham Harikatodgitam Punati Bhunatrayam. So, we're coming to the end of Kapila Muni's instructions. So, the initial part of Kapila Muni's Sankhya, so this I think I spoke a few times, so I won't bore you again, but Sankhya is the proclamation of a large body of knowledge into simply expressible terms. And in English it's called parsimony. So, trying to simplify things, very complex, right? The world is very complex. It's very extremely complex. I mean, let alone the metaphysical world, just this physical world, extremely complex. So we need someone to put this into expressible, simple terms, like at least like one book, right? Like, how good is this? Someone can put the whole complexities of material nature into one book. Are you happy with that? Of course, right? So that's Sankhya. So initially, Sankhya philosophy, Kapila Dev was going through fundamental principles of material nature. So I think when I was here before doing these fundamental parts of material nature, I showed how it is very close to Aristotle's four causes, which are the material cause, the formal cause, the efficient cause, and the final cause. If you really do it closely, it is exactly like Sankhya. So I always do in my discussions and my classes, even sometimes away from the temple or inside the temple, I always kind of emphasize this, that there is no need for us to be afraid of the modern Western education. If you can see the traces of Sankhyas and Vedas in the modern education. If you go to a university and if you pick up a book of philosophy, if you're doing, I don't know, just pick a faculty, philosophy, theology. If you go to a university and if you pick up a theology book or a philosophy book, we don't need to be so afraid thinking, oh my God, we are going into Maya or something. No, we don't need to, because if you have a keen eye, you can actually see the traces of Veda and Sankhya in our modern academic universities right now. I can show you. I promise you. So we don't need to so worry when we are pursuing academics, or when someone is pursuing academic studies. We don't need to so worry that it's Maya or something. It's actually not. If you have a keen eye, you can actually see Sankhya. So that's the reason when I started the fundamentals of material principles, I connected it with Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas, which are one of the first two books handed to you when you pick up a master's in philosophy, or bachelor's in philosophy, or bachelor's in theology, or any kind of metaphysical faculty or subject you choose, degree you choose, the first thing they'll give you is the 4 causes of Aristotle, or the 5 ways of Thomas Aquinas. That's what they give you. And if you have a keen eye, you will actually see, I promise you, it is exactly Sankhya. I promise you, these people are actually Bhakta Aristotle, they are actually Bhakta Plato, they are actually Bhakta Socrates, they are actually Bhakta Thomas Aquinas. They are actually all Bhaktas. Just need to have a keen eye how they are doing it. So that's the reason when I spoke about the fundamentals of material nature through Sankhya, I gave you an example of Aristotle. And also I think I may have also taken some time to go through the 5 ways of Thomas Aquinas, and maybe some of Plato's world of forms. So we don't need to be afraid. We can be very broad-minded and accept it. So next, Kapila Muni goes into the subject called understanding the material nature. And when I was talking about understanding the material nature, the topics on material nature, I kind of was emphasizing that to take consciousness as primary. Because the current modern education or the current academics, the world, the way people are thinking and the way people are living, the problem is not just the way people are thinking, the problem is the way with how we are living. So when they both combine together, the way we are thinking and the way that we are living, what happens is we have come to a very strange, dire state of existence where we are taking physical, phenomenological, natural, material nature to be all in all. But Sankhya and Aristotle's final cause, or Thomas Aquinas' final cause, they're turning the tables around, and they're saying, obviously Kapila Sankhya, he is turning the tables around and he's saying consciousness is primary, not the physical nature and the phenomenological world. So something has to be eternal, right? Something has to be eternal. So if you read the science book, they're telling you that the material physical elements are eternal, right? And they just go through transformations and you're evolving, and consciousness is some kind of conjured phenomena, just epiphenomena, it just comes out, and who knows how it came out, we have no clue. We will find out. That's the promise. So there's major 2 problems, is either you conjure consciousness up, and when you ask you just conjured up and you just made it like a magical phenomena, can you explain it? And when you say, explain it, and they say, no, we can't explain it now, but I think we are proceeding in a way that we may explain it in the future. There's no such thing as future. The future never comes. Okay, we don't know. So it's like Prabhupada always says, a post-dated check, right? Give me a check that I can cash now. Don't give me check that dates December 12th of 2023. Don't do that to me. So future is phantasmagoria. Future is a magic. So let's not. So that's what the answer is. But if something has to be eternal, either physically or Sankhya, anyway, something has to be eternal, right? Something is eternal. Now my question is, why not consciousness? Either you choose to be in the physical, phenomenal, logical or material world, as we call in our sampradaya, or you are in the non-material, spiritual or consciousness world, Satchidananda. Regardless of where you are eternal. So the point is, if you have to choose eternality, do you want to choose a physical, phenomenological, contingent, dependent, destroying, dispensable, as eternal? Or do you want to put consciousness as primary and consciousness as eternal? It's your choice. We have a choice. We have a choice to make every second. So that's what Kapila Mahamuni was trying to explain in most of his understanding the material nature. Is he was trying to explain how consciousness is primary and the rest of the phenomenological world is derived through what's called Chit Matra and Tan Matra. I'll explain to you, I need a whole class to explain this Chin Matra and Tan Matra. I don't want to bore you on a Monday morning with my philosophy. But how a Atma comes into the material world and connects, because Atma cannot connect in the material world. Atma is not supposed to be in this material world. It's like pouring oil in the water. It's in the water, but it will never mix. You can clearly see it. If you pour oil in the water, you can clearly see it. It will never mix. So Atma coming into a phenomenological or material world, it will never mix. The two faculties that are helping Atma to mix and feel and sense and act as if we are part of this world. And they are Chin Matra, which is attached to the mind, which gives that ability to connect to this matter. And there is Tan Matra, which is the ability of the protophysical state of the matter to be able to connect to the mind. So the mind has got this Chin Matra with the ability to connect to the physical world, and the matter has called what's called Tan Matra, which is the formal cause of Aristotle, and that's what helps us to connect to this material world and make us feel as if we are part of it. Otherwise, how does the game start? If you're not given a banner of Sydney Roosters, if you have not given a uniform of Sydney Roosters, if you have not given a jerkin of the Manchester United Man U, Ian is here, so let's take some UK examples. If you're not given a jersey of an Arsenal, or if you're not given a jersey of Man U, how will you have that impetus in the field to score some goals and make some tackles? You see where I'm going? So when you don't have that Chin Matra and Tan Matra, the jerseys to put on in the form of these bodies and the mind and intelligence, you don't have something to interact with the material world, because the Atma is never supposed to be here. It's completely incompatible. It's like putting oil in the water. It never mixes. You try as hard as you can. Never mixes. So Atma is never supposed to mix. So that's understanding of material nature. Yeah. So who do you want to take? Consciousness as primary or the physical phenomenological world as primary? You have a choice. We have a choice. You have free will, free will like the butterfly wings. Once touch, never comes off the ground. So we have a free will to choose that. So that's what it is. So you have two choices. One choice you have is go by the scientific. Okay? Do you want me to go through like quickly how the scientific explanation is? Is it okay? Or it will be too much of philosophy on a Monday morning? You okay? So, the explanation of the current physical world is what's called singularity. It starts from singularity. Singularity is a completely infinitesimal, incomprehensible little speck of dot from the current modern perspective. And at some stage, some kind of big blast happened. Some people call it Big Bang. There's so many names. So the singularity just bang, like it's complete conglomeration of the infinite density, a little dot, and it blasts. And then what happens for the next 380,000 years? It's a calculation. Just a calculation, mathematical calculation. This was done by a physicist called Alan Guth. He's still alive. You can Google him. Extremely genius mathematician. So he was part of all these calculations. So what happens is there was this big blast, and then for the next 380,000 years, what happened is They call it inflation. It's a period of inflation. And things were just going on and combining and everything. The ionization and obviously the material nature came about. Right? And then from after the inflation period, which was 380,000 years, from there, all of a sudden, this universe take this snail pace, this very slow snail pace. And in this snail pace, obviously, apparently, by natural selection and chance mutation, we have emerged into a world that we see. It actually is a very long topic. I'm giving you a nutshell summary. So there was this singularity. It has like a big bang. And then there's a period of inflation for 380,000 years. And then from there, at a very slow snail pace, things go eventually at a snail pace, and by what's called ionization and all these combinations and permutations, natural selections and chance mutations, all of a sudden, shabang, you see this completely fine-tuned universe. So the analogy is, if you leave a monkey in your room, wherever you're sleeping, I'll give you an analogy. If you leave a monkey in your room, and you leave that monkey with an Apple computer, you leave it for 2 weeks. What are the chances that you go back, you open the door, and you find out that the monkey is typing some Shakespeare sonnets? Thank you, Ian. That's the analogy to compare the singularity, the Big Bang, and the conglomeration of all the physical elements, all of a sudden coming into this fine-tuned universe. It's like leaving a monkey with an Apple computer in a closed room and hoping to find out that if you just leave that in that room for long enough, it's going to come out with Shakespeare's sonnets, Shakespeare's dramas, Shakespeare's poems. That's how exaggerated this picture is. That's how much exaggerated this picture is. Because the fine-tuning, it's called the fine-tuning, and I'll stop this, but I'll give you one last scientific, okay? What does it mean by fine-tuning? What it means by fine-tuning is what Alan Guth calculated what's called, when the inflation period started, he calculated what's called a critical density. A density is the amount of matter that should be available for an amount of space. That's critical density. So what Alan Guth did is he's calculated what's called what is the optimum amount of density for the amount of matter and the amount of space. What is the optimum amount of proportion so that they actually can function without either colliding or completely getting lost. So it's called critical density. So he calculated critical density. And then they actually sent some machines and rays outside, and they actually found out the actual density of this universe. The amount of matter, the amount of space. And you have to give them a hats off. The actual density and divided by the critical density came out to be 1. They were exactly equal. Even if it is 1.0000064 zeros and 1, it doesn't match. Either our universe is filled with too much matter and collapses, or it's too much space and everything just goes everywhere and there's nothing you can see or hear or talk or interact. So the critical density divided by the actual density turned out to be 1. It couldn't be 1.0000064 zeros and 1. It couldn't be that. That's how fine this universe is tuned. So the allegory is, you leave a monkey in a room with an Apple computer and you hope, like, if you leave it for long enough, it'll come out with a top class top class sonnet or a drama from Shakespeare or Wordsworth's poetry. Yeah, Wordsworth's poetry. Yeah, that we can relate, right? Wordsworth's poetry. What's the chances? Very, very little. So what they try to say is they try to justify this by a term called non-fluctuation equilibrium. Have you heard this word before? Non-fluctuation equilibrium means out of infinite possibilities of what things can happen, if there are infinite possibilities of what things can happen, there has to be one possibility where everything is fine-tuned. So what they try to explain is, we are in that, out of infinite possibilities, in that one universe, we just happen to be, because of free parameters, a completely fine-tuned universe. Now you have a choice here. I've been telling you, now you have a choice. Do you want to go gamble and dice your life on this monkey coming out with an Apple computer, monkey coming out with Shakespeare's dramas? Or do you want to gamble your life and place your, take a choice, place your opinion or place your, report on a world where consciousness is primary? And consciousness drives. When consciousness drives with a purpose, then it's so easy to explain why it's all fine-tuned. Why it is working so fantastically. Why the earth doesn't go and collide into Sun or Mars or Venus and just keeps rotating around the same orbit without no problem. How the sun is just staying in the center and doesn't go for a ride. How everything is so balanced. So you have two choices. One choice is to take that one, where you have to expect like this completely, like infinite chances, like, throw in a few plastic and fiber and wires, and you come some metal, and 3 billion years after you come out and you find out an Apple computer. Either you have this choice, or you have a choice where you put consciousness as primary. And now, Prabhuji may ask me, what is the problem in taking physical as primary, and why is Sankhya, and why are you insisting and emphasizing that consciousness has to be primary? Why do they have any problems to do that as consciousness as primary? Why does the modern Western education has to go back, keep falling back into the default position of a mechanical, materialistic nature? Why do they do that? Why? What is the risk in accepting consciousness as primary? What is the risk? Can you take a guess? If you have to take consciousness as primary rather than physical world or material world, like dumb, innate world as, rather than that, you take the option of consciousness as primary, what is the risk? That's it, bingo. That's it. Legend. Fantastic. Give him a big Mahaprasad garland. You take this now. Come on. That's yours. Fantastic. So as soon as you take consciousness as primary, then you have a purpose. Then you are accountable. You have to live an accountable life. Then you have a purpose. You cannot do whatever you want to. You cannot perform your whims. You cannot just go around, But now you are an accountable person. You have to follow disciplines. You have to follow virtues. You have to follow a mannerful life. You have to be a gentleman. Who wants to be a gentleman, right? Find like one gentleman and makes your day. So who wants to do that? But if you go this way, then you just can do whimsy, whatever I want to do. Just whimsical. Just, rock up, just party your life, and you live only once, and who cares if you're dead? You understand? What do they call? Life is a witch, and you die. Who cares? That's correct. Fantastic. You're paying attention. I'm very happy. So that's the problem. That people don't, the modern Western education, they don't want to put consciousness as primary, is because as soon as you bring consciousness as primary, then you have a purpose, you have to drive a purpose in life. Then you have to be virtuous to other people. Then you have to live a mannerful life. Then you have to be a disciplined life. That's the problem. So who wants to do that? Virtuous life? Virtuous life? Be a gentleman? Be a gentleman? What is gentleman? You understand? So that's the problem. So that people, the problem is not the way we are just thinking, this current civilization is thinking. The problem adds with the way the current civilization is living. So the thinking and the living is in such a way that we are so remote and disconnected to the nature that we don't give a rat's to the nature beyond outsiders and the nature inside us, our psychological nature. When you live a life where you don't have to give a rat's, put the psychological science into soft science, not hard anymore, and then put everything else into this deterministic box, that everything is phenomenological, everything is natural, mechanistic, physical, then you are at your whims and you are at your will to act in whatever way you want. Who is going to stop you? Who's going to call you with a virtue bell? There's nobody to call you with a virtue bell anymore. There's nobody who's going to throw you some moral precepts in front of you. What is moral precept? You understand? So that's the problem. So it's not just the problem with the way we think, it's the problem with the way we're living. So in combination, we are naturally inclined to a you live only once kind of phenomena. You're naturally inclined to wanting to see everything as just a physical mechanistic world. But when you put what Kapila Muni is doing, he is putting consciousness as primary, and when you put consciousness as primary, then you have to talk about Chinmatras, how is the Atma interacting with the material world. Then you have to put Tanmatra, where every material nature, all the elements of material nature have a Tanmatra, a proto-physical state to be able to connect, which means God is present, has to be present, his conscious energy has to be present to be able to allow all these interactions. Now, as soon as you talk a supreme consciousness, a God, a higher cause, a transcendental purpose, who is helping everything, then now you're in a very dangerous position as a modern human being. And the dangerous position is that you are accountable. You have to follow virtues. Now you have moral values. Moral values? What moral values? Virtue? What is virtue? Just take a bowl, drink out your tummies and just, waste out and, have a swim in the sea and come home with big hangover, jet lagged and hangover. That's the life. And how can you do that? If you can completely discount consciousness out of our lives. Do you see? How are we going? Is it too much philosophy or are you going okay? You okay so far? If you feel a little bit like too much thrown into the deep end, please let me know. I can go through this. Because it's very important, because the problem is we often get very afraid of modern Western education when we don't have the eye to see that it's the roots are actually in Sankhya and Vedas. You develop the eyes to see everything that you see in modern education. Then you're not so afraid of the academic education. Yes, Ian?
The virtuous life, is that same as moralistic?
They're about interchangeable words, yeah. I wouldn't try to draw like a strong line between virtue and moral. Moral is more like a scribed, transcribed, and something that everybody follows and it becomes a moral. Virtue is something you automatically are attracted to it. So they kind of go in hand. Is it? Okay. So I better read the purport because, yeah. Right. So anyway, Gramya Katha, right? We're talking about Gramya Katha. Let's understand these conventional religious practices. So we need to really understand why one should cease performing conventional religious practices and should be attracted to those which lead to salvation. Here is the problem. Let's come into now religious talk. Okay, now I've been talking a little bit of scientific and metaphysical and philosophical, Aristotle and Plato's and Thomas, all this. Now let's back to Fred Hoyle and Alan Guth. Let's come back to just normal, like our lives, right? Our normal religious spiritual lives. So what is the problem with conventional religious practices? What is the problem? Why is Kapila Muni saying that release the conventional religious practice and come to moksha dharma? That's what he's saying, right? Now why would he say something like that? What is the problem with religious practice? Here is the problem. Have you ever heard a term called philosophical theism but psychological atheism? So what happens when we come to a religious institution, when we take up a religious life, the tendency is we quickly become self-righteous. The Vaikuntha plane will come at, not all of us, but some of us, at least in the religious institution broadly. I'm speaking about universally, like worldly. What happens is when someone comes to religious principle, the tendency is to become very quickly self-righteous. I am on my way to the Goloka Vrindavan, the doors of the heaven. If you're on some other religions may say, the doors of heaven are just about to open. Or you become self-righteous. I'm so pure, I'm chanting 16 rounds. I'm such a pure person. See outside the world, they're all in Maya. It's kind of a self-righteous conversion experience. And what happens is we make ourselves doctrinized. And we completely forget that this is actually a movement of consciousness, which is the reason Prabhupada named this International Society for Krishna. Why would he do that? Why would he put Prabhupada? He did not say International Society for Hindu Religion. He did not say International Society for Sanatan Dharma. He did not know. He said International Society for Consciousness, which backs up everything that I've been talking so far. Consciousness is primary. So that's the reason Prabhupada puts consciousness as primary. So when we come to a religious movement, it's very quick, very easily we can indoctrinize ourselves. Doctrinize. Do the Bhakti Shastri programs, do the Bhakti Vaibhav. Is that Bhakti Vaibhav that I did? Yeah, I think so. Bhakti Vaibhav or something like that. Yes, Bhakti Vaibhav. Anyway, Bhakti Shastri and then you Bhakti Vaibhav and then you do all these programs and all the doctrines, the 64 varieties, all the devotional services explained in the Nectar of Devotions and the Sambandha, Abhideya and Prayojana and all of that. And then you quickly come into, you become a little, usually the religious, like Christians may have something else of their own, Islamic may have their own things, Buddhists have their own things. And we become quickly religious and, self-righteous. So, we understand the material nature, the fundamental material nature. We understand the actual material nature inside and outside, and then we finally come to devotional service. So devotional service, dharma projita kaitavatra parama nirmatsaranam. It's explained right in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. This is not a dharma, grama dharma. This is not a conventional, doctrinizational, proselytizing religion. This is not that. We are not in that. We are in a movement of consciousness. So that's why Prabhupada is saying in his translation and Kapila Muni is saying in his shloka that we have to reject this conventional dharma where people are doctrinized themselves, become self-righteous, and completely sometimes even forget that before a devotee we have to be a gentleman and ladies. We completely forget that. Because now we have the beads, right? Now we have the tilak, right? And now I have a shikha, right? And now I have a dhoti. Now, Prabhu, how come you're not a gentleman outside then? No, a gentleman? What's gentleman? No, you mean supposed to be a nice, good civilian out in the society. Look after everybody, look everybody as atmas. It's not so esoteric to look everybody as atmas. You have to see everybody as atma. You have to come to that point. Not just people inside the temple, people outside the temple on the street. You have to see as atma. Every person as a conscious entity. Don't put people in the boxes. This religion box, that religion box, this country box, that country box, this gender box, that gender box, his box, her box. Don't put people, we are conscious atmas. And as conscious atmas, the forms we have is fantastically the original Swarupa Siddhi, Ishvara Pranidhana Swarupa Siddhi from Yoga Sutras. Our original position is to completely reciprocate the love, the bhakti, the fire of love, the fire of beauty, the fire of reciprocation back to the Supreme Consciousness Krishna. That's the reason of our existence eternally. Doesn't matter if you're in material world, doesn't matter if you're in spiritual world. Our point, the reason, Prabhupada says number of times, several again and again and again, Krishna expands himself into the living conscious entities because he wants to enjoy unlimited rasa. And our duty is to provide that reciprocational rasa back to Krishna. That's devotional service, which is now the chapter. Kapila's instructions on devotional service. So how can you start doing that if you're not looking people as atmas, inside and outside? You understand? So Kanishta Bhakti looks everybody inside as devotees and outside karmis. Or, Prabhupada can say karmis, we can't keep calling, Prabhupada can call them, but we can't call them like that. So we don't put people in those boxes. And we don't indoctrinize ourselves. We have to always remember every step. This is an international society for Krishna consciousness. Consciousness is primary. Then when you lead a life like that, then the term comes that I said, philosophical theist. Philosophically, by reading Bhakti Shastri, by doing your Bhakti Vaibhavas, philosophically you become a theist. But psychologically, I still want to be in the center of the circle. Psychologically, I still treat people like, what do they call in Australia, or maybe in England, like I try to be a jerk. When I go outside, I'm a jerk. Like complete jerk. But when I'm inside, I'm like, oh wow. That's conventional dharma. You're not seeing everybody as atmas. It's not so esoteric to see everybody as atmas. You don't have to have some kind of X-ray eyes and CT scan eyes and you're like scanning through everybody and seeing everybody as... No, that's not what seeing everybody as atmas means. Seeing everybody as atmas means you see every soul, their skills, their consciousness, their intelligence, their beauty, their fame, their whatever they have, it's an endowment from Krishna. When you see like that, you see everybody as an atma. It's not such an esoteric thing. It's not like, oh, Prabhu said he sees everybody as atmas. It looks like he has got some CT scan eyes or X-ray eyes and he sees through the bodies. No, that's not like that. You did a fantastic kirtan today. It reminded me of Yogapit in Mayapur. The last time I was in, everybody knows Yogapit? It's just next to our ISKCON temple. It's Yogapit, that's Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's mat. So it's called Yogapit. So your Kirtan today really reminded me of Yogapit, and it's ecstatic. I felt really I was in Yogapit. So, but I see that endowment, I see that taste that you have, I see that skill you have, I see that taste, rasa you have as an endowment from Krishna. Then I'm seeing you as Atma. It's not like I have some X-ray eyes or something. No. So you can do that people with inside, and you can see that people outside. Archayam eva hare, pujam yav shraddha ihate, natatad bhakteshvanneshu sabhakta, prakrita smrita. First class. So it's just first class, lower, kanishta devotees that we have to go raise at least to the madhya level. And God hope that someday we'll go a little bit higher. But that's the releasing the conventional dharma. We have to release this idea that we are in some kind of religious circle. We have to be philosophically atheist, and we have to be even as psychologically we're atheist. But the way it works, we become philosophically all theist, but psychologically, I want to be in the center. Psychologically, I want everybody to praise me. Psychologically, I want everybody to regard me as the top class, Paramahamsa of Sydney or something. The center of everything. Then psychologically, I'm an atheist. Philosophically, I may speak nice Bhagavatam, nice Bhagavad Gita, Shreyan Sadharmo Viguna Paradharmo Dhunishtita. So, no, not like that. You speak all the Bhagavad. Philosophically, I'm like theist. But as soon as psychologically, you remove me from the center, you remove from the limelight, I get all disturbed. I'm not getting the accolades, I'm not getting the prizes, everybody doesn't regard me, and nobody cares, I've been there out in the streets for 12 hours on Saturday at Blacktown Parade. Did even anybody knows? Does anybody even know? I was at that festival. I was there 12 hours doing distribution. I was at Jagannath Yatra. Everybody left, but I was still there doing. Yeah, of course we have to appreciate each other's service. But the point is, when we have an obsession of being the center, then what we become is psychologically we become an atheist, although philosophically we are atheist. And this conventional dharma has one more problem. I just want to highlight today before I don't have much time, so I'll just quickly highlight. Another problem we have, apart from becoming a philosophical theist and psychological atheist with this conventional dharma, another problem we have is that mimamsa. So just like karma mimamsa, you heard of karma mimamsa before? So karma mimamsa or yagna mimamsa, these mimamsas, the way these works, these are some of the darshanas in the Vedic civilization. It works is, you have a particular prescribed processes. You do certain yagna in this way, you chant certain these mantras, and you have a certain fires, and you have this panchagni, you have a dakshina, you do the right mantras in a disciplinary way, and then what happens is the result is bound to come. And it's called mimamsa. Yagna mimamsa. And the karma mimamsa, as you do certain karmas, you do certain donations, you do certain charities, you do certain sanskaras in your life, and the result is bound to come from the heavens. It's bound. It's like when you go to a driver's license test. You do all the tests correctly, you pay the fees, and you go to the counter and you give the application and the fees. The RTA or the people in the NSW, they can't say, oh, I don't see any love from you, so I can't give you the driver's license. No, it doesn't work like that. You follow all the rules, you pass the test, you follow the manual. It is bound that you will end up receiving a driver's license. There's no need for love there. So karma mimamsa or bhakti mimamsa is a bit like that. You follow these rules, you follow this pro forma, you follow this particular way to do things, and then the mantras and the agnis and the dakshinas and everything, and the prasadam and the dakshinas, and finally you get a result. It has to be provided, like Hiranyakashipu. He did his tapasya until he became a skeleton, and the result boons from the Brahma are supposed to come. Brahma cannot deny him that. So in the same way, what happens is in bhakti also, we kind of eventually, gradually develop that kind of tendency. You do this right, you do that right, you do this service correctly, you do this mantra, you do your 16 rounds, you do this, your deity worships, you do the 5, sadhu sangha, bhajana kriya, bhagavat shravana, matra vasa, Sri Murti Ardhana. You do all the, prescribed way, and then the result is bound to come. We become like a mimamsa like that. Like the driver's license test. You did all the tests and you paid the fees and you given the application form. The driver's license has to be given. They don't come and say, by the way, do you have any bhakti or do you have any love for the New South Wales government? No, they don't say that. So in the same way, what happens, our mind becomes automatically programmed as the mimamsa, and we make it as a bhakti mimamsa. We've done everything correctly. Sadhu sangha, bhajana kriya, bhagat shravana, mathura vasa, Sri Murtira Aradhana. The 5 major principles in the Nectar of Devotion, right? It was so interesting. When I took up the Nectar of Devotion, I read it like 4 times back to back. Finish, started, finish, started, finish, started. I was like, I love this. Niyamagraha. So you do just take up principles for the sake of it. Niyamagraha. And another is Niyamagraha. You don't completely reject them because you think it's all too, dogmatic or doctrinal. And you reject it. Both is dangerous. So we come into this bhakti mimamsa. And we have 3 problems. 1, we behave in the similar manner with the devotees. I'm doing all the right sadhana, it doesn't matter how I behave with devotees. It doesn't matter now. Or it doesn't matter how I connect to the world, it doesn't matter. I'm a jerk outside in the world, it doesn't matter because I've chanted my 16 rounds and I'm doing the 5, sadhu sangha, bhajana kriyana and all that. So what about your behavior in the world? What about your behavior in the temple? What about your behavior with the devotees? What about your behavior with Matajis? No, it doesn't matter. So, we have to be very careful of this conventional dharma. And Prabhupada is saying that you have to come to this moksha dharma. What is the moksha dharma? Moksha dharma is you see every single soul as an atma. And I repeat again, it's not an esoteric way of having some kind of X-ray eyes or CT scan or MRI scan eyes or something. It's simple. It's not so esoteric. Simple. Whatever skill you see, whatever intelligence you see, whatever beauty you see, whatever opulence you see, whatever wealth you see, whatever art you see that person as an endowment straight from Krishna, as a part of Krishna. Mama evamsho jiva loka. Then bingo. And then you act on that basis as consciousness as primary. When we act on that basis, when we relate to this world on that basis, when we let the world relate to us, if we don't let the world relate to us, we'll be no more than dinosaurs. Going to get extinction very soon, because the dinosaurs didn't prevail because they didn't find means to adapt. If we don't find means to adapt, if we don't find the pearls, even in the academic education, if we don't connect to this world, if the world cannot relate to us, we can become as extinct as dinosaurs. So, but we don't want to. Why? Because we have so much love for this scripture. And we want to see the value, how much value we have benefited, how much value it has provided us, how much we have benefited, and how much this world will benefit by this scripture. When you see that value, when you see that, how do I put this? Welfare. Mutual welfare, paraspara, anyonya, welfare, sambandha with this world, where we are relating to the world, where the world will relate to us, where we can become representatives and icons of Krishna's love to this world. An icon, an image of Krishna's love in this world. Then dharma projita kaituvatra paramanirvatsarana. Because this movement, this consciousness movement is only for the non-envious. What is the ticket to the spiritual world? Not my 64 rounds on Ekadashi. It helps, not completely. Not my 250 books, at the Riverstone Festival. No, not that. What the ticket of the spiritual world is this. Do you want to know? Your life will never be the same. Do you want to know? Your life will never be the same after this. The ticket to the spiritual world is non-enviousness. You're not envious of anybody's position in the spiritual world. You're happy to be ignored. You're happy to be dispensed, completely dispensed and ignored. And you're still sitting at some kund, just chanting Hare Krishna, very happily satisfied. So that's the Sankhya. First, the Sat, the existence was explained by the fundamental material principles. Then the Chit, where the understanding the material nature in the form of Chinmatras and Tanmatras. And finally, Kapila Muni is explaining the devotional service, which is the Sat, Chit and the reciprocation with Krishna in love. These are like, people think like sex and drugs are the greatest pleasures. I feel sorry for them. I really do. I feel so sorry for them. The real Ananda, the real bliss is in your reciprocation with other Atmas for the pleasure of the Supreme Consciousness, Krishna. That is the best pleasure. Not sex, not drugs, not the jumping in the harbor, in the steamer boats, sculling up a bottle of vodka, half a bottle of vodka, and jumping in the harbor. No, I mean, they may, I'm not saying they don't have, so they may enjoy some little, fleeting pleasure. No disrespect. Let them, if they want, that's what their stage is. I don't have any complaints. I'm not criticizing them. But what I'm trying to say is, but once you see this reciprocation as an Atma with other Atmas for the pleasure of Krishna, when you see this reciprocation every day between you and Krishna, as Radharani, as a guiding principle, then pleasures as sex and drugs and, half a bottle of vodka and, going around, perving around girls around the star city, or vice versa, the girls perving around the male genders in the star cities, or if that's their consciousness, I'm not going to disturb them. But what I'm trying to say is, there is a scope that when you come to this pleasure, you don't have to be determined and self-sustained and self-focused and self-controlled brahmachari or grihastha. You don't have to do that. You just grow out of it. It's like a little boy, 5-year-old. Like if you come and give me, a little Lego truck, to build a Lego truck. Am I interested with that? Not that much. Unless I'm sure I'm playing with my children. I'm interested. Otherwise, not much interested. It's a bit like that. It's not like you become this self-controlled brahmachari or self-controlled grihastha, vanaprastha or sannyasi. No, you just grow out of it. You don't know when you grow out of it. You turn around and someone says, oh, what about the sex and what about the drugs? And you're like, I never thought about it. Why? Because I'm so busy in my service. Why are you so busy in your service? Is someone forcing you? No, it's so blissful. Something about it. I just love it. Did you see? That's the Sat, Chit and Ananda. Sambandha, Abhideya, Prayojana. Or in the Sankhya terms, understanding the fundamental material principles, understanding the material nature, understanding our own nature, and finally instructions on devotional service. This is the best life. What best opportunity do we have than sitting on a Monday morning and talking about this beautiful Shastra? What best opportunity do we have? How fortunate you are. Doesn't that light up your day just to see how fortunate you are? On a Monday morning, just nice scriptural discussion, talk about Sankhya, talk about Sambandha, Abhideya, Prayojana, Satchita, Ananda, our original constitutional positions as Atma, and dancing under the tune with all other Atmas, under the tune of Radha and Krishna, the Supreme Consciousness. That's where the buck stops. Ishvara Parama Krishna, Satchidananda Vigraha, Anadiradir Govinda, Sarva Karana Karanam. The buck stops there. Doesn't make sense. So I really urge, please everybody, to connect to this world, relate to this world, become gentlemen. I don't need to be a jerk out there. Become gentle ladies, become gentlemen. Let the world relate to us. Let us relate to this world. Let us help this world to become a better conscious world, which is the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Yeah? Just one more point I just want to quickly address, which is the Vivikta and Vivikta Sevi, like say, being in secluded places and not consuming much. We have 2 minutes, I'll quickly cover. It doesn't really just mean that Vivikta Sevi doesn't mean that you live in some little secluded hut. Vivikta Sevi means you're always completely focused on service. I need a complete another class to explain. Because Vivikta, technically, word-to-word translations in Sanskrit means it's living alone in a secluded place. But I'm saying you should actually live in a completely populated city. But you could still be Vivikta because you're completely absorbed in the consciousness of yours and consciousness of others, and how to elevate your consciousness and how to elevate others' consciousness. That's still a Vivikta life. Vivikta sevi laghvasi yathava kayamansa gnana dhyana yoga paranityam vairagyam samupashrita. 18th chapter, verse number 11, I think. So Vivikta. And like another thing is eating very little, mita bhuk. That doesn't just mean eating like less food, that means less consumption as a whole. Don't get completely bewildered when you go to Costco, or don't get completely bewildered when you get to, IKEA. We don't need to get completely bewildered as soon as we get to Westfields. I need this, I need that, I need this, I need that, I need that. I'll be happy with this. No, we need to understand every single thing that we buy, the first question we ask is it good for my consciousness? Then that is mita bhuk. It's not just eating less prasad. That is mita bhuk. Every single thing we buy, every single place we go, every single thing we expose our consciousness to, we're always thinking, is it good for my consciousness? Is it going to elevate my consciousness? And is it going to upgrade the consciousness? Is it going to help me elevate and upgrade the consciousness of the people around me? When you see that, you're still living in a secluded place and you're still a limited eating brahmachari or grihastha or contemporary, whatever you are. So that's the way we see things. So quickly summarize, okay? I have 1 minute. We spoke about fundamental material principles, and I showed how we don't need to be afraid of the academic education, because if you have a keen eye, you can actually see all the education all the education has its roots in Sankhya and Veda. If you have a keen eye, you don't need to be afraid of universities. You don't need to be afraid of, so-called, double quotes, karmis out there. No, you don't need to. Two, I spoke about understanding the material nature outside and place consciousness as primary. You got to see consciousness as primary world. And I explained a little bit of singularity, how you have choice to place either physical world as primary or consciousness as primary. You have a choice. Which one do you want to choose? And then we come to devotional service, where the problem is, as soon as we join a spiritual movement, we have a problem of becoming self-righteous. I am the devotee now. So no, what about gentlemen, guys? What about gentle ladies and gentlemen and ladies? So we got to let people relate to us. We got to relate to the people. And then same with the devotee circles. We have to let devotees relate to us and don't become like, self-righteous, I'm so self-righteous kind of thing. Like prakrita bhaktas. Archayameva hareye, pujam yachadayihate, natatat bhakti shanyechu, sabhakta prakrita smita, kanishta adhikari. So we have to elevate ourselves to that madhyama platform somehow. We have to do something. And you go to that madhyama platform. And then I finally explained about the dangers of conventional religions, how we can either take too many principles or reject. And we become mimamsa, bhakti mimamsa. I followed everything correctly, so the doors are guaranteed for me. But what about love? What about love for Krishna? What about tears? No, I'm so busy for that. I can't even shed some tears for Krishna. I'm so busy in my service that I don't even find time to shed some tears from Krishna. How sad. I don't have time to shed for some tears for Radharani. How sad. So we have to come back to this devotional service. That's dharma projita kaitavatra paramanirmatsaranam. And I said, the ticket to spiritual world is for non-envious people. Boom. Very good. And I finally explained that Vivikta Sevi and Mita Bhuk, living in seclusion and eating limited, doesn't just mean that you are in some Himalayas in a little hut, but you don't get confused and completely mesmerized when you go to IKEAs or Westfields or Costco's. You know exactly, when you're everything you're buying, first thing you think, is it good for my consciousness and my children's consciousness, my family's consciousness, my partner's consciousness? That's the mita consumption. And regardless of where you are, you could be in Sydney, you could be in New York, you could be in San Francisco, you could be in Tokyo, you could be in Hong Kong, you could be in Mumbai, but as long as you're focused on your elevation and upgradation of your consciousness, you're still living in seclusion. There's no point. Yeah, it's all glories to Varnashram Dharma, complete glories to Varnashram Dharma. But Prahlad Maharaj is saying that, I feel so sorry, Naivo Dvijay para Vaita Duratya Vaitaranya. Yeah? Soche tato Vimukha Indriyartha Chetasa, Vimudha Indriyartha Chetasan. So he says, I don't worry about the hell. I'm not worried about the hell. Naivo Dvijay para Duratya Vaitaranya. I'm not worried about the hell. Twadvirya Gayana Mahamrita Magna Chitta, because I'm completely merged. Soche tato Vimukha Indriya Chetasarthan. Maya Sukhaya Bharam. Udvhate Vimudha. I'm worried about these fools that are completely in Maya. So I want to help them and I want to be in the cities. Why is Prahlad Maharaj saying that? So I'm not criticizing any like Varnashram Dharmas or anything, but just I'm saying that Vivikta Sevi is not just limited to going into Himalayas and living in caves or making myself a little room in the farms, or no. Vivikta Sevi is completely absorbed in elevation of your consciousness and elevation of the Atmas, consciousness of Atmas around you. That's also Vivikta Sevi Lagvasi. That's the expanded understanding of Vivikta Sevi Lagvasi. Okay, I think I'm just about there. So I'll stop there. I didn't get a chance to read purport, but I think all I spoke is, trust me, is exactly in line with that purport. Trust me. I've done this a few times, so it's exactly in the line of purport. You can read that later. It will be in the line of purport. We're out of time. Any questions? Quickly, any comments? I'll do this. Please. See, that's a very yogic question. It's a yogic question. So, is it possible to escape Earth's gravity? It's not actually really completely scientific question. It's actually also a philosophical question. So, I'll explain you why. It's not actually possible to. Why would we want to do that? That's number one question. Because if you have a home and you have a nice shelter, why do we want to do that? And you can practice Krishna consciousness here very nicely. And you have Krishna, you have devotees on this planet. And the gravity is pulling us and keeping us close to all the... If there was no gravity, I wouldn't be close to all you devotees. And it sucks, not being close to devotees. I don't like it. So if this gravity is helping you stay close to all the devotees and this temple, first question is, why do we want to go away from the gravity? That's the first question. Okay, maybe you may say, okay, some yogis are trying that. Let other people do other things. So as material body, gravity is inert in you. It's called what I explained, chinmatras and tanmatras. You as a person, your material body has a what do they call that? Primordial. So you have a primordial, your body has a nature to be attracted, to be pulled by this gravity. And the earth has a tanmatra to pull you down. It's called tanmatra and chinmatra combination. It's the formal cause of Aristotle. So it's not going to happen. But as an Atma, you're everywhere. Achedyoyam, adoyoyam, akledyo sarvesha. Nitya sarva gathasthanur, achaloyam sanatana. Nitya sarva gathasthanur. No gravity can pull you as an Atma. So the point is, do you want to be recognized and do you want to be in a bodily identity, or do you want to be an identity as an Atma? The question is that. And if you want to elevate yourself and pull yourself away from gravity and have no effect for gravity, what is the motive in doing that? Do you want to follow Narada Muni and follow the footsteps of those great saints and travel in space and help other planets to become Krishna consciousness? If that's your motive, beautiful, go for it. But if just to show some yogic gimmicks, you're already flying in planes against the gravity, so you already did that. You're flying in planes all the time, aren't you? So you are for 16 hours when you travel to India, away from gravity anyway. So the point is not if you can go away from gravity, the point is not scientifically the point is what is the motive behind it, which is the reason I said it's not completely a scientific question, it has some philosophy in it. Philosophy is, why do you want to do this? What's the motive behind it? You already go on the plane so many times and you've been away from gravity. So why do you want to do it again? Unless you want to follow Narada Muni, be a in his footstep as his disciple, be a space traveler, go to this, what is that in the Star Wars, the Death Star, and make it Krishna consciousness. If you want to be the Star Wars, and you want to beat the gravity, and you want to go and make that planet Death Star a Krishna conscious planet, go for it. Well, look, that discussion is going into so much speculation, and we may take it offline, because there's no proofs. How can you prove all these things? There's no, we're talking about empirical evidences and cosmology and cosmogony, saying that other planets does not have same gravity. Well, that will depend on what kind of bodies the people are carrying in other planets. For your composition of body, for your composition of this gravity is correct. And if someone has told you that other planets don't have the same gravity, maybe you have to complete the circle by understanding, do the bodies there are similar to our bodies? They have different bodies. So maybe they don't need so much gravity. Or maybe there are other planets, they need more gravity than we require. So this is going into a very large scientific discussion of multi-universes and all that. But I'm very happy to take this offline. But this is again coming to the point, I'd be more interested in understanding the motive behind why we want to do it. Is it to make that planet Krishna conscious? If that's what your motive is, fine. But if it's just for, like, the CEO of Virgin, you just want to go to the moon or Mars to find more real estate, if that's what your motive is, I'll still say best of luck. You still have my good wishes. I don't have any envy for that. Do you understand? The problem is the motive. Yeah.
Spiritually, we can travel between planets, but physically, maybe not.
Yeah. You have to be a yogi. There's a special practice, and I maybe you'll have to in your next Bhagavatam class with Narada Muni, you may have to ask him that question. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I just really want to express my gratitude that you've been here and heard my dry, boring philosophy for about an hour. I really want to express my gratitude and my humble obeisances at your feet. Vanchakalpatarubhascha, krupasindubhyevacha, patitanam pavanebhyo, vaishnavabhyo namo namaha. Was the voice okay? Clear? Okay. Okay, thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki, his transcendental Srimad Bhagavatam purports ki. All glories to the assembled devotees.